Apologies. Though Barley slept at night, he tossed and turned as the mistakes of the last 30 years or so played themselves over and over in his mind. Corey was an object to him. He couldn't deny it. His heart
Deny.
still deny. He
Deny
could
it.
deny it. He couldn't deny it. His heart stirred in anger merely at the thought of Corey's name. But there was a new feeling this night, a desire to be rid of the Achi he felt regarded Corey rather than a desire to be rid of Corey himself. He was wanting his son back, or perhaps more accurately, he was beginning to feel the desire to be Corey's father again. Speaking of Achi, ma'am, what's the pronunciation of that word ACHE? Sorry, ma'am, I cannot hear you properly.
You pronounce it ache. It means pain.
Okay, ma'am. Speaking of ache, the pain he felt for banishing Kate was now acute. As he replayed what he had regarded as the multinational meeting in the boardroom, he heard his words and witnessed his scroll afresh. He
Okay,
had
wait. The mutinous meeting.
mutinous. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, what mutiny means, you're rising up, you're protesting. So
Okay, ma'am.
the meeting of his company members was angry, mutinous. They wanted to take over.
The mutinous meeting in the boardroom. He heard his words and witnessed his skull afresh.
His
He had
scowl, which means frown.
found. Okay, ma'am. His scowl afresh. He had been a child. He couldn't afford to lose Kate, but his pride had driven him over a cliff and blinded him to a truth he suspected was obvious to everyone else. That Kate, not Lou, was the prime mover behind Jagram Company's success. How could I have been so blind? What am I going to do? How can I rescue the company? But by the wee hours of the morning, his thoughts and pain were located elsewhere. For 31 years, Carol, who noted had slept soundly through the night, had given her life to him while he had given too little in return. They meet at a dance at
They met. They met
at a dance at
Syracuse.
Syracuse University. Carol was on a date with one of Lou's friends. Lou, alone that night, couldn't take his eyes off her. He began the evening wondering whether it would be ethical to move in on his friends. By the end of the evening, it was no longer a matter of ethics, only of strategy.
Okay.
Over the month.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any questions about the meaning of other words? Abu, you okay? Good. Okay, do you want to read, Abu?
Yes, I want to read.
Okay, go for it. Until the next page.
Yes. Over the months that followed, Lou came to see Carol as a contradiction.
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 Do you know what that means? Contradict means to talk opposite. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. On the one hand, she had an amiable, easy air about her, quick to laugh, always ready with an engaging, sometimes witty response.
Witty, funny, witty response.
Witty response. In a word, she was fun to talk to, fun to joke with, fun to be around. On the other hand, she was instinctively cautious, the obedient daughter of a preacher.
Preacher.
She was preacher. She was raised to be wary of men, wary
Mhm.
of men and their intentions. Her father was fond of asking all of her suitors to come down.
Suitors,
Suitors
right.
to come down into his basement to see his friends.
Okay. And do you know what they mean? Her suitors?
Well, suitors, yes, I know what it means, yes.
Okay. So when her father is asking anyone who wants to go out with his daughter to come down to the basement to see his trains, that's put in quotes because it's not really about trains at all. It's about he wants to talk to the young man and learn more about him and decide if it's okay for his daughter to see this young guy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Whereupon, without turning on the lights, he threatened them life and limb if they were to do anything unseemly with his daughter. As the latest in a long line, Lou received
this lecture.
This lecture as well.
A lecture is a word that you only find when a grown-up, an adult, is is dictating to a young person what they need to do. That's the only time I've heard that word.
Yes.
My mother used to do lectures all the time. And Blanche is nodding her head. But otherwise, it's not usually used. Okay.
Yes. He thought it might have had a strong effect on a high school age boy who lived in the preacher's hometown. For a junior in college, however, with no attachment to her father's congregation or faith, the lecture simply raised practical roadblocks. By then, he had completely fallen for Carol Jamieson. Now he knew that Mr. Jamieson had to approve of Lou before Carol could fully fall for him. He spent a lot of time with her father and his friends. Between dates with Carol and lectures from her dad, Lou's grade point average took a beating.
Grade point average is the ongoing record of results in exams. So Lou wasn't doing so well in classes because she's paying too much attention to Carol.
But there was no turning back. He thought of Carol during class and study time anyway. So it was so good trying to rescue his grades by pulling away. Ultimately, Lou, who had been raised a non-practicing Christian, won the trust of Carol's religiously devoted father.
What is it? What is it, Tasbia?
No, ma'am, I was talking to my mother. Hello, ma'am.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. I was talking to my mother, ma'am,
Oh, okay.
in my own native language, Bangla, so that you
Okay.
can.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And you're doing the right thing by muting. So, okay. Go ahead, Abu.
And he proposed. It was then that Lou learned a lesson about Carol's independence. She might have shared her father's caution, but she did not blindly act upon his approvals. When Lou first proposed, she told him she would have to think about it. He held onto the ring for 5 months before she finally allowed him to slip it on her finger. The moment would stay with Lou forever. Yes, Lou, I will marry you. She suddenly told him out of the blue as they were driving home from a church service one rainy Sunday afternoon. Excuse me, Lou couldn't help from blurting. I'll marry you, Lou. I'll devote my life to you and to our family. And she had,
Okay.
as
Thank you. Okay. So there's several really, good colloquial expressions in that page. Are there any that either of you would like to go over what it means? Like toying. Oh, can you go back a page, Blanche? And another page. Okay. As you look over it, can you tell us, exactly what was going on in that page? It was about Lou and Carol. And what was the story about? What did Lou want to do?
Ma'am, I think that as the title is wrote apologies, I think the story is about there is something apologies.
Well,
Otherwise,
that's coming. We're not there yet. This was about Lou and Carol when they had just met. And Lou thought he was in love with Carol. So what did he want to do?
I think that Lou wants Carol to look at him to get more attention about him.
Yes.
And to know that Lou loves him. Yes, I think this is what about this paragraph.
Yes, exactly. And Lou had to pass a test. What was the test? Who was going to stand in Lou's way? Why was Lou talking about, quote, trains with Lou's father, with Carol's father? Wasn't talking about trains, of course. But
it's down here in the bottom.
What?
I said it gives you the answer in the last part. He wasn't religious. He wasn't grown up religious.
That's right.
He had to convince her father what he act like. He believed in the values.
Right.
Because he said the father spoke to him like a high schooler,
a
very young man who followed the same faith, but not as a older young man.
Right.
Who was following his own course in life, which was to his daughter.
Right. So, Carol's father thought he was protecting his daughter,
Right.
but he just wanted to get to know who was this young guy who
Mhm.
wanted to marry possibly his daughter because, you know, he wanted to protect his daughter. So that's why Carol's father was the topic of the page. And Carol respected her father, who was a religious teacher. And so she waited until her father felt good about Lou before saying, yes, I will marry you. And when she said yes, she also said, I will devote myself to your family. So when Carol said she was going to marry, she was really promising her whole self to Lou. And Lou wasn't really thinking about it that way. You know, there was a discrepancy between what both of them meant by, yes, I will marry you.
And I will take care of you.
And I'll take care of you.
Mhm.
Lou didn't really get that.
No.
And so she, for all the years they were married and the 3 children they had, she was 100% there on the job. And he took her for granted. And this happens a lot of times. When people get married, they don't have the same concept of what that means. And that ends up causing a lot of problems over the years because the person who gets disappointed has disappointment's really difficult to live with, to deal with. And, you know,
It's different expectations.
different expectations.
Expectations that aren't clear.
Right. And that happens especially when 2 people get married who come from different backgrounds. That's hard to do that. People fall in love with different backgrounds all the time. But it's really hard to make a marriage work when people have different backgrounds because they have to learn from each other what those values are, and they have to agree on them. Okay. Do you want to read, Blanche?
I'll marry you, Lou. I'll devote my life to you and to our family. And she had. As Lou remembered this, he knew he had not returned the single-minded devotion. Oh, his eye never wandered to another woman. That was not his vice. No, his problem was not occasional lust for others. It was rather a constant lust for himself, for his own success, his own station in the world. It had started innocuously enough with his decision to enlist in the Marines and go to Vietnam. He started toying with the idea while Carol was mulling his marriage proposal. Perhaps out of fear of rejection, or maybe as a way of avoiding what ultimately would be a public embarrassment if she were to finally reject him.
Okay,
Or still,
wait a minute. It had started, I'm answering a question. It had started innocuously enough. That's a big word. Innocuous means innocent or, you know, simple, not harmful, not worrying.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I was going to ask you that question.
Okay, good. Okay, keep going.
to avoid the public embarrassment if she were to finally reject him, or still yet out of fervent patriotism. You wonder. Lou had enlisted 2 days before Carol surprised him with her acceptance. It would be 5 years before they would walk down the aisle.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a long time to wait.
Yes, it was. She was devoted from the beginning.
Yeah, really.
And he was ducking out before it started.
Yeah, yep. Okay.
That was 25 years ago. Their first child, Mary, was born less than a year after that, and their second, Jesse, followed 2 years later. Lou's first company was born shortly thereafter, and with it, a workplace obsession that left Carol to play the part of a single parent, emotionally in any case, if not physically as well. Corey, their third child, was more than a day old before Lou made it to the hospital to see him and to see Carol. The meeting in New York just couldn't wait, he had told her. They never could, even though Yale Hospital in New Haven was only 90 minutes excursion from Wall Street.
Okay, while we're still on this page, are there any questions about any words or phrases or?
Ma'am,
Yes,
the meaning of mulling?
Say that again.
Mulling.
Mulling.
Carol,
Mulling. He started toying with the idea while Carol was mulling his marriage proposal. M-U-L-L, is that it?
Yes, I believe that's it.
Okay. Means thinking over, thinking about, reflecting, meditating on. Okay, what else? Fervent.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fervent means heartfelt, strong.
Do you know patriotism?
Yes, ma'am, I know the meaning.
Okay.
So basically,
I think that's it.
what was it like to be married to Lou for Carol? Was he a loving, attentive husband? A workplace obsession. In other words, all he could think about was work. And so Carol did not have a parent partner. She was what we call a single parent, somebody who was the only person being concerned and paying attention to the children and their development and their well-being. In other words,
The meaning of obsession.
obsession, it means a fixed idea. That's all he could think about.
Okay,
When you're
thank you.
obsessed with something, you can't think about anything else. So he got caught up just thinking about his work. And, that's not totally uncommon, but it's not a good thing for the family. So he couldn't take a train 90 minutes from New York to the hospital where his third son was born, the one who is now giving them problems. It was because Corey, this third son, had, been dealing with drugs and had been imprisoned at least once, that Lou and Carol were now far, far away out in the desert in the southwest of the United States for the program that Corey was beginning. The judge in court had told Corey, okay, you can go back to prison or you can do this 2-month program.
Excursion.
Mhm.
What is the meaning of excursion? In the last
Obsession.
Obsession.
no, ma'am.
Um,
Excursion.
Oh, excursion.
Excursion. Okay. It means a trip. It means a pretty short trip. It's something
Okay.
you can do, go there and back in a day. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
So
this shows too,
what?
it also shows, he doesn't say that so much as the first, second, and third, but by this child, he really didn't even connect with Corey in the beginning.
That's right.
It took a day for him to even get there and to even be concerned about his son being born.
Right.
He had no connection from
Right.
birth.
Right. Exactly.
He was already out.
Right. And, the son is disconnected
Mhm,
from society.
mhm.
He's unhappy, he's disconnected. And part of it is that, his father really never paid attention to him, doesn't care about him. And he's aware of it.
Mhm.
Okay, so go ahead to the next page and get started. On this
Carol,
page.
Carol had been hurt by his absence, but she had by then grown used to it. Lou didn't take well to being told what to do or when to do it. So she had learned over the years not to ask much of him. The contradictory combination of her fierce devotion and steely independence is what held the family together, such as it was together.
Right.
He blanched in memory of the time 10 years or so before they married.
After they married.
After they married. When Carol had asked him to do something, he had asked her to come into their walk-in closet. Unsure why, she had timidly followed. Lou had then instructed her to put on a pair of his pants. She looked at him quizzically, but played along. Now, Carol, he had said, what do you notice about those pants? That they're too big for me, she had said, as the waist gapped open around her. And never forget it, Lou had answered emphatically, referring not to the difference of their waist size, but to the weight of the responsibilities Lou felt he shouldered. He shuddered at the memory. If Carol's father had still been alive, Lou knew he would have deserved a violent meeting with his trains.
Okay, so let's stop there. This whole shuddered, okay, Abu, that means like trembled. He shuddered. He remembered that and he thought, oh my God, what did I do? In his new awareness of being kind to people, he thought, wow, that was bullying. I was a bully. And he shuddered thinking about Carol's father and what Carol's father would have said. Blanched. Okay, that's another word that goes with shudder. It means that his face went white. He felt fear. Okay, cogitations. Whoa, that's a good one. Yeah. It means reflections, thoughts. Fancy word. What else?
What else?
Steely
This one?
independence. You know what that is?
Yes, ma'am, I know. Independence meaning.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Steely,
Steely though.
steely means totally strict. She wasn't gonna waver at all.
And strong.
And strong, yes.
Mhm.
Fierce. I don't know
She
where
held
that
the
is.
family together. Her pants were just as big.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Well-
she was apparently a small person.
No, I'm talking about when he said the weight of my pants.
Yeah,
And he didn't realize the weight that she carried
exactly.
being a single parent, raising
Exactly.
a family by herself. He just saw himself like, I take on the weight of this family, like he held it together.
Right. But she, in fact, was the
He
one
diminished her.
taking the responsibility.
Right.
So this whole thing about pants is it's kind of a cliche in American slang that it's about, well, the person who is in charge of the family. They say that person wears the pants. And so it's about, for him, it's about being a man. And, the whole thing about pants not being too big for her was a very cruel and it was really aggressive. It was bullying on his part to do that.
Isn't it also in our culture and a lot of cultures that men being the breadwinner feel that they take on the biggest responsibility and wear the pants? Because pants are where the pocket, where the finances are kept. Whereas the woman,
Interesting.
carries the weight, raising the children, keeping the home,
Right.
balancing everything, and not shown in a lot of cultures as
Right.
that position being as important. And to me, that's what he brought her down to.
Right. He was diminishing her. Abu asked about the walk-in closet. That just means a really big closet that you can walk into. And a lot of, it's something that you only find in houses that have enough room in them, larger houses that have enough room to make a closet that's another room.
It shows wealth.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
size of that closet shows wealth.
Yep.
And that's
Exactly.
why he took her in there. Everything he did, he based everything off of money. And he worked for money, not for family.
Right. Yes. Okay, any other questions? Oh, I'll take a turn. These cogitations remained with Lou the next morning as he and Carol drove in silence to Camp Moriah. As they neared the offices, he could keep his thoughts to himself no longer. Carol, I'm so sorry, he said, deeply sorry. For what? For everything. He shook his head pathetically. For not loving you as you have deserved to be loved. For not being there for you as though you have always been there for me. Carol didn't say anything for a minute. Her eyes started to water. You've been there, Lou, she finally said. Sometimes you've been other places as well. That may be true, but you've always come home to me. Many women are not so fortunate. Not many can say that they've never had to worry, but I've never had to worry about you, Lou. Whatever else you might be devoted to, I've always known that you were devoted to me too. But it shouldn't have been a me too, Lou said. That isn't good enough. Then he set his jaw. I'm going to make it up to you, I promise. After a moment's silence, Carol said, "You're not the only one who needs to apologize." "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," she said. "I've been there for you, I suppose, but my heart hasn't necessarily been there. I've been blaming you silently for years." "But you've had every right to," Lou defended her truthfully. "Have I?" She turned to him. "The more I've become consumed with how my own needs aren't being met, the larger those needs have become, until I think I have numbed myself to the needs of others, to your needs, to Corey's." "There you go, beating yourself up again, Carol." "No, Lou, beating myself up is what I have quietly been doing for years now. I'm not beating myself up now. I'm just finally noticing the internal fight. But all you've done for years is meet everyone else's needs, Carol. You've never lived for yourself at all." Carol smiled weakly. "That's what I've been telling myself too, Lou, but it hasn't been true. I see that now." And then she added, "I've been hating you, Lou." This rocked him. "Hating me?" he repeated lamely. "Blaming you in all kinds of subtle ways." She paused. "Have I dutifully performed the household work?" "Yeah, but that's just a behavior, don't you see? Every time I've cleaned the house, I think I've buried myself a level deeper in self-pity. And I've spent years now feeling guilty for not feeling about you the way I know I should. It's been a downward spiral." Lou didn't know what to say. "So what are you going to do?" he finally asked. "I don't know for sure. I hope to get more help with that today." At that, the conversation went quiet, and Lou and Carol pondered their situations in silence. 2 minutes later, they arrived at Camp Moriah. It was time to go deeper. Any questions on that page? I didn't see any puzzling words. Okay, so we've gone through one chapter, and there's still another one that I will read aloud and post, and I'll ask you to go through. And we'll talk about those 2 chapters on Friday. Okay?
Amen.
Okie doke. So we need to, what we're going to talk about Friday is, again, peace in our hearts. Did Lou or Carol have a peaceful heart in these 25 years of being married to each other? They both made a good start there to making peace. They confessed to each other. They told each other what had been going on in their hearts, what they were beginning to realize about their relationship, about how they had treated each other during 25 years. That's like a third of a lifetime. That's a lot of time. Yeah. I keep saying to myself that my motto is better late than never. It's an old expression that means exactly that if you become aware, it's better that you have, even if it's pretty late in life. That consciousness is good.
It was like they came out of a devoted to each other relationship to a loving. The love was gone a long time ago, but they were
Right.
devoted in a way, financially and taking care of the family.
Yeah,
But they realized the love towards one another was not there.
right, exactly. And that's a coming to consciousness. That's always a good thing.
And that directs to the son,
Yeah,
loving the son through whatever he's going through.
exactly. So, it's a diagnostic moment. They are understanding what has brought them there, that they have not been attentive to each other or to Corey. And Corey has been living the consequences of the lack of love and showing them what happens in a family when people are not loving to each other. So Corey is like the outward demonstration of how they have been in their hearts. And this happens in life. We really can become more aware of how we are feeling inside. And that inner feeling, that inner knowing, that instinct, if you will, that instinctive knowing is a tremendous gift to all humans. We all have it. That we know if we really reflect and think how we feel in our hearts. And then it's up to us to get to a place where we feel okay about how we're living. Apologizing is a good place to start, to ourselves and to anybody else in our life. It's a moment of awareness and honesty. That's right, Tasmia. You recognized the word. Good. Okay, so thank you for staying with us today and for learning some new words and some new ideas. And I look forward to the discussion on Friday.